Are you thinking about moving to Issaquah or Sammamish and just can't decide and don't know which one to pick? Well, in this video, I'm going to compare the two and tell you everything you need to know about living in Issaquah or Sammamish. Hey everybody, this is Tova Williamson, and on this channel we shoot tons of videos of what it's like to live in the Seattle metro area. So if those are videos that you want to see more of, go ahead and click that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified every time we have new videos. We honestly get reach outs every day from people moving to the area, and we love hearing from you guys. We want to help when you're relocating to Seattle. So if you're moving anywhere in the Seattle metro area, give us a call, text, email, however you want to get a hold of us, because we got your back when you're moving to Seattle. So Sammamish and Issaquah, two separate cities on the east side. They're really similar in a lot of ways, but they do have a few differences that we're going to talk about in this video. So if you're thinking about moving to this area, this video is going to hopefully help you out. So Sammamish and Issaquah are both really nice areas. Let me pull them up on a map for you here. But they're both really great areas, very similar in a lot of ways. Sammamish is going to be a little bit more rural of a feel sometimes. It just depends on where you are. There's like a little town center, definitely more of a small town vibe. But if you're further out, it can kind of feel a little more rural, versus Issaquah definitely is more small town vibe. Not necessarily urban, still kind of suburban, but there's like the old downtown Issaquah, and then there's another neighborhood called the Issaquah Highlands, which is a whole pre-planned community. So within that area, it can feel very, like suburban, and they've got a whole downtown area and you can walk around. It's very like idyllic type of area, just like nice, everything's brand new, really safe. So those are kind of the two main differences of Sammamish and Issaquah, but I'm going to show you where they are on a map so you can see in relation to each other, and that's going to kind of talk about some of the differences too, because just where they are geographically could make a difference on why you decide to move in one over the other. So Issaquah is over here. It's east of Bellevue and Seattle, just pretty much a straight shot on I-90. Right around here. So there's the Issaquah Highlands that I was talking about. Downtown Issaquah is more over here. But Issaquah, it's really close to mountains and everything, really nice area. Then we've got Sammamish up here, which is on the east side of Lake Sammamish. This is like the little town of Sammamish. There's a few restaurants and stuff down here. And really like Sammamish kind of stretches all along here too. So, I mean, Sammamish is a pretty broad area, but just depending on where you are and if you're going to need to travel into the city, Sammamish can kind of be tough sometimes because you got to like get around the lake and then go over. So there it is on a map, just to give you some geography of the area. But first thing we're going to talk about is schools. So how do they stack up each other in schools? They're both really good for schools. They both have an A+ on the niche website. So the schools are great. Like not one beats the other necessarily in the school quality. Issaquah is part of Issaquah School District. Sammamish is part of Lake Washington School District. So they are different school districts, but both of them have really great grades on schooling. Another thing to consider is safety. How safe are these areas? Both of them are relatively safe. Sammamish is going to take the cake a little bit versus Issaquah in the safety. Looking at the Area Vibes website, Sammamish gets an A+ for crime, which means it doesn't have a lot of crime, not like an A+ like good crime. Issaquah gets a B, so still not bad by any means, but Issaquah does sit a little bit lower than Sammamish in the crime section. The biggest thing in Issaquah, the violent crime is really low, but it's property crime that kind of ticks that number up for Issaquah versus Sammamish, which violent crime and property crime are both really low there. Sammamish also has a smaller population, like less people, so that might be a factor in some of those numbers too. There's just like less people there. Also, like to get there is a little bit tougher, whereas Issaquah is right off the freeway, so it can be a little more accessible to criminals, I suppose. But So those are kind of the key differences. Sammamish is a little bit safer than Issaquah, but both are going to be relatively safe, generally speaking. Affordability, let's talk about that because those two cities are known to be more expensive. Sammamish is a little bit more expensive than Issaquah, but they're both up there. They're both more expensive than other areas in the east side. Issaquah's median home price for April of 2021 came at 1.135, and that was with single family homes. That doesn't include condos or anything like that. And Sammamish's median home price for April came in at 1.425. So both over $1 million, but Sammamish is a little bit higher. And that might be, maybe some of the safety comes in there where people are willing to spend more money to live there. But yeah, I mean, both relatively expensive. The one thing to note, Sammamish is mostly going to be single family homes. There's not really like a lot of condos in Sammamish. There are a few townhouse developments, like new ones that are being built there. But still, it's mostly going to be single family homes, and the homes are big there too. Usually, like you're not going to find like a tiny little rambler in Sammamish. Usually, like they're usually pretty big homes on pretty big lots. Issaquah also has a lot of single family homes, but there are more condos in Issaquah and townhomes. The Issaquah Highlands, which I talked about before, has a lot more condos, townhomes, and kind of these like hybrid homes. Like they're single family homes, but they're still part of a HOA community association. So you're still going to have like HOA dues and things like that, but they are like a single family home. So that could be where some of the housing prices are a little bit less in Issaquah, just because you can find some smaller condos and smaller homes, which tend to be less expensive than like the big, huge homes. Issaquah and Sammamish both have, there's a lot of new construction going on in those areas. Both of those areas, it's nice because they do have the freedom to spread out a little bit. Some other areas like Kirkland, Bellevue, Redmond, there's just not as much space to move out to. So building new construction is tough. But in Sammamish and Issaquah, there's just a little bit more room to grow. So we're starting to see a lot more new construction in those areas. One thing to note too is about the median income in both of these places. The median household income, according to the 2019 census, in Issaquah was $109,000. Sammamish came in at $174,000. So the median income is pretty high there. That's, helps support that median home price. So just something to consider in those areas. The income is a lot higher than some other neighborhoods. Let's talk about the commute. So depending on where you are working, when you're living in these areas, one might beat out the other. If you're working in downtown Seattle, Issaquah is going to be your best bet. Issaquah, you can just hop on that I-90 and go over. I mean, you're still going to hit traffic, but I-90 at least is a pretty good wide freeway. There's plenty of lanes. I mean, not to say that it doesn't get bogged down once you go over the bridge, but it's a lot easier. It's a better straight shot. Sammamish, because it is behind the lake, you're going to have to take these roads to get to the main freeway. And you can either go south to I-90 or you can go north up to 520, just depending on where in the city you work. If you're working in Bellevue or somewhere else on the east side, even like Redmond and Microsoft, Issaquah, Sammamish can kind of be pretty comparable. Sammamish is a little bit closer to Redmond because you can just shoot straight up. It's actually a lot closer, depending on where you live in Sammamish or if you're in the northern part. So if you're working on the east side, both, I mean, they're pretty comparable. It's not going to be too big of a difference, but if you're working in Seattle, I'd say Issaquah is definitely going to be the easier shot. Coming from Issaquah too, they do have park and ride, and you can ride public transportation into the city. There's a park and ride right off I-90 that you can just park your car, get on the bus, and I think the bus ride's like 38-minute ride or something. So it's a pretty easy ride. You can read, you don't have to be like sitting in traffic driving. So I know a lot of people do that live in Issaquah and work in Seattle. They just hop on that park and ride. Sammamish does also have park and rides too, but same thing, just where it is geographically, like you're going to have to go to that park and ride. You're going to have to get on one bus and it takes you down to that I-90 Issaquah bus and then you go over. So you're going to have to transfer on a bus and that bus ride's like over an hour from Sammamish, depending on where you are. So, I mean, if you live in the further south part of Sammamish, you can just like drive to that Issaquah park and ride and hop on. That could be a solution, but generally Issaquah is a little bit better for public transportation to and from the city of Seattle. So things to do in Issaquah versus Sammamish, both are not like nightlife crazy scene places. They're both pretty quaint and quiet, definitely geared more towards families. A lot of families live in these areas. So if you're looking for like a wild party scene, these are not your areas to live. Issaquah has more to do than Sammamish, still not like a ton, but in the downtown Issaquah and the Issaquah Highlands, you've got restaurants, there's a movie theater, a few different little bars and restaurants, coffee shops, stores. Issaquah Highlands has a lot of like the big box stores that you would want. Same with down like southern Issaquah, south of I-90. There's a couple different shopping centers too. So you're going to have like pretty much everything you need in Issaquah. And then it's pretty easy to get to Bellevue or Seattle to go do any other sort of like events that you would want to do. Sammamish, on the other hand, does have a small little downtown area. It's just, I mean, it's not bad, but it's small. There's just not as many things. Like you've got your pizza joint, you've got your Chinese food, your Thai food, your Mexican restaurant, your few fast foods, and that's about it. So it's not the most exciting culinary place to be, but it's still not bad. It still, you know, has a sampling of things, and then it's still relatively close. You can drive up to Redmond to have some other restaurant options. So, and I think there's only like one pub in Sammamish too. So if you're wanting to like go out to a pub and have a drink, like there's one thing to do. Whereas Issaquah has a couple more options. So if you're okay with the more quiet, reserved life, Sammamish might be a better bet. If you're wanting a little bit more to do, Issaquah is going to be probably your better bet. The other thing to talk about is the proximity to nature. So both of these cities are really close to nature. That's what I think draws a lot of people to these areas. Is Issaquah is just right at the base almost of Snoqualmie. Like you just drive a little bit, I mean, maybe 30 minutes and you're at Snoqualmie Pass, you're at all these different hiking trails, skiing, that sort of thing. So if you're like really into hiking and skiing, like Issaquah is the jam. That's like where you want to be because you can just like get over there. You're not like in Seattle or Redmond or Bellevue where you have to like drive through the city and get it. You're like already almost out there and it's just like a straight shot. So I know a lot of outdoor enthusiasts like to live in Issaquah because it's just, there's so much to do there. There's so many trails. It's just really beautiful. One thing to note too in Issaquah, depending on where you are, like it's very hilly and mountainy around. So a lot of times like you can find houses that are just perched up and you just have like these amazing views of the mountains, and sometimes you can see Lake Sammamish depending on where you are. So that's something else that really draws people to it, is just like the natural beauty that's around there, and you still kind of get that city feel, but you're like so close to the outdoors. It takes nothing to get into like nature. Same with Sammamish. Sammamish is really close to nature too. Sammamish is on the lake though, so you're definitely going to get more of like that lake vibe in Sammamish versus like the mountainy climbing vibe. There definitely is that further inland in Sammamish, but it does focus a lot around the lake. There's a lot of water activities that you can do, boating, fishing, paddleboarding, all sorts of things. So that makes it fun. And so Lake Sammamish is the main lake, but there's a couple other smaller lakes within Sammamish too that people go to. So it is more of like a water sport area versus Issaquah that's more like into the mountains and the trails. One thing too to mention with Sammamish that people don't realize, like when you look on a map, you can't tell, but Sammamish sits up on a plateau called the Sammamish Plateau, and it is, I think, about 100 feet higher than the highest point in Seattle. So it's like it's up there, and people don't realize it, but that can be a challenge commuting and getting like on and off of that plateau, because it can be like steep hills and stuff to get up and down there. And if it snows, which we get snow every so often, it's not like a regular winter occurrence, but sometimes it does, like getting up and down off that plateau can just be like a nightmare if it's snowing or like the weather's really bad. So that's something to think about too. Like sometimes if you're up on that plateau, you know, sometimes you just want to stay up there. You don't want to like fight with traffic to get down and to go into things. So I'd say if you're living in Sammamish, you want to be prepared for that. And plenty of people live in Sammamish and then commute too. It's not the end of the world, but it is something that I think catches people by surprise sometimes when they go there and they're like, oh, wow, like looking on a map, you can't tell how hilly and mountainous this area is, but it is very, you know, up and down. So something to be prepared for. So there you have it. Those are kind of like the main pros and cons of, or not even pros and cons, but like comparing the two between Sammamish and Issaquah. Both are awesome places to live. It's just, you know, a few of the slight variations in house size, house cost, and safety, and just like the lifestyle that you want to live when you compare the two. So hopefully that was helpful. That's our wrap for our video. Thank you. Moving to Seattle can be tough, especially coming to a new area that you don't know. So we want to help you find the perfect spot for you, but we can't do it unless you give us a call. So reach out to us, call, email, text, whatever you want to do. We got your back when you're moving to Seattle, Washington.